Hello all, I am filming this bonus video for you so that you can get the most from our work together and our time together, so you have a deeper understanding of how this vehicle, this body, this beautiful intelligent body that you have works, so that you can really apply things to get into deeper alignment with it, feel more ease in your body and your mental emotional state throughout your day. So I'm going to start with reviewing a drawing that you've most likely seen me draw. It is our spectrum of optimal health, and it is something that I think is vital for our understanding, is really seeing this bird's eye view that our health and well-being, whether we feel our best, happiest, connected, calm, grounded, healthy, happy, or our lowest, disconnected, maybe anxious, stressed, overwhelmed, there are different things that are happening inside our body that dictate these states that we feel on the outside. So that's what we're going to talk about today, is what's happening on the inside and what can we do to influence how we feel and how we function, because it's so important. One thing that's so important to realize is that when our body is feeling a certain way, there are a couple of things that are happening inside this vehicle. This is this balanced state that we've talked about, homeostasis. Homeostasis is like coming back to center. Good example for this is if you're an active person, if we were all to go outside right now and go for a jog, go for a run, what would happen? Several things in our body. Our body is going to start to increase its heart rate, beat more blood and oxygen to all of our cells and tissues. Our lungs volume is going to increase, getting more of that oxygen flowing. Our core temperature is going to go up. All of this is happening, and then our body is basically signaling to bring it back to center. So how is it going to do that? It's going to bring our sweat glands to produce sweat, which then lowers that body temperature back to a centered place. So if you can think of that as one example, our body is going through many billions of little micro adaptations all day, every day long. And when the body is really well, or has a good job at coming back to center, that's called homeostasis. And that means you have a high level of adaptability. That is really what we want. And that is how we're going to be living more on this side of the spectrum. We know that our cells and tissues are moving in both directions here. So as we move this way, we might think of cells and tissues breaking down or degenerating. I like to say even misbehaving, not doing their job as effectively as they're designed to, as they do over here. We know that our body moves this way too. These are cells and tissues becoming more connected, more awareness through the body and the mind and body connection. And what that does is it ultimately builds and breeds more communication, which means our body functions better because it's getting more of the vital information that it needs to do its job. One of that main job that it's doing is it's healing, it's repairing, and it's building new cells, new tissues. So let's think of an example of that. If you have children, or you have had the ability to watch a child grow up, or if you can just reflect on your own childhood, every single one of us started as just two cells and tissues. So one from mom, one from dad, came together, began to multiply. The cells at the beginning are all the same. They're multiplying within mom's womb. What happens after that is they start to differentiate. And one of the first structures to develop is called the notochord. The notochord later forms your nervous system. And your nervous system is that master control system. It starts to tell the body how to form the heart, the digestive system, the cardiovascular system, the brain, the nervous system, the spine, the fingers, every single part of your body, your eyes, is formed by that system without any input from the outside. It is naturally doing that, right? No one had to read the baby or the mom an instruction manual to form a perfect, beautiful baby. So that intelligence that lives within you beyond birth. When a baby is born, that intelligence continues on throughout your life, is with you today in that vehicle called your nervous system. So your nervous system is the master control system that determines where and how well our body is connected and communicating, which determines how we feel and how we function. So as we said, if we are showing up less than this full communication, good adaptability and balance in the body, responding well to stress. We move this way, we now have a departure. We're not having an easy time returning to that balanced state. So I say that we've departed from homeostasis. We're having a harder time coming back to center. When life happens, we're still out of alignment. We're not quite coming fully back. So let's talk about how that happens. I think it's important to recognize that we said that nervous system lives with us throughout our lifetime. So your nervous system is actually the only thing that is creating new cells and tissues. The only thing that will allow you to heal over time is that system within your body. It creates about 10,000 new cells and tissues every single day. So in a matter of time, 7 years is the average time that it takes the body to fully regenerate. So I'm talking just like your hair and your nails are growing over time, and we notice these things, our other cells and tissues regenerate as well. So our heart takes about 8 months, our liver regenerates every 6 months, our entire musculoskeletal system regenerates every 36 months. That's close to 3 years. Wow. So if you are a brand new body every several years, why do we often feel worse as we age, or things come on that we didn't have when we were a younger body? Or why the opposite? How come some people can actually get healthier and feel better as they age? So let's talk about that as we get into explaining again, what is that nervous system? So nervous system, very simply, is our communication between our brain and our cells. So brain is sort of telling the cells what to do, how to do their job. And the cells are communicating to the brain, saying what's happening internally so that the brain can adapt and create strategies to find homeostasis. So this conversation, if it is happening really well, both ends are hearing the conversation, we have 100% of the information traveling from brain to body. This is where we live. When we have less than 100%, we start to show up elsewhere on the spectrum. This spectrum, or this conversation that's happening here, this is electrochemical information. It is essentially the electricity that lives within our body, is the energy that goes to every cell and tissue and fills it with life force and tells it how to perform its job. One way we can think of our nervous system is as our processing system. This is something we talk about in the office. We are responsible, that nervous system processes what we call experiences every single day and over our lifetime. We have so many experiences. We can try to make a little bit of sense of them by categorizing them and saying we have physical things, sitting, standing, moving, jumping, exercising, accidents, falls, injuries. We have mental experiences, the conversation that goes on between our ears. Are we hard on ourselves? Are we beating ourselves up? Are we loving and positive and encouraging between those ears? Emotional, how we feel around different people, places, and things. Do you feel different when the weather changes or your moods change? Do you feel different in a certain yoga studio or a certain shopping store, right? Chemical and experiences that come in through our food, our environment, our technology, sometimes the things that we're not super aware of that are coming into our environment, our experience. These are all information that comes in. And I'm going to go into a little bit of entry-level quantum physics to explain sort of what the body is doing with this information on a deeper level. So if you were to think of, let's go to what is quantum physics 101. Quantum physics 101 says that our world, our entire world, everything that we see in our world is made up of the same thing at its simplest level. So if we were to break everything down, we would ultimately see that everything is made up of atoms. Atoms are made up of protons, electrons, and neutrons. And the way that each atom and those particles within the atom vibrate actually determine what we're looking at, what we're feeling, what we're experiencing. So let's think of something outside. Let's think of our dense concrete that we're driving on, our vehicles are driving on. That is not living. It is dense. It is super concentrated. There's not a lot of space between those atoms and they vibrate really low. And then we have something that is living like a tree outside, or even this wood that was once living that I have my desk upon, that is a higher vibration. There's a little more space, and the atoms are vibrating a little higher than that dense wood. What that's describing is essentially the higher the vibration, the more intelligent the organization of matter or material. And that means the more intelligent expression of that matter or material. And living things are a higher organization of matter, more intelligent expression than things that are not alive. And then when we think of living things all together, we can think of our species. There are certain species that are said to be more intelligent. So our humans and dolphins are actually said to be the highest intelligent species, and they also have the highest organization or highest frequency between their cells and tissues, their matter. What all does this have to do with our health and well-being and what we're talking about today, getting the most from your care and your work? It has to do with the spectrum. So each of us, we could say, are our own organization of matter. And when we are more dense, low vibration, energy is not moving, energy is stuck. This is when we show up over here on this side of the spectrum. As we start to free up that energy and actually create higher and higher levels of connection, which means a higher vibration and organization of matter, that is when our body regenerates and becomes healthier over time. So that is why that is so important to understand, is that the same thing as, or a good example can be thinking of water. Think of how water can be both ice and it can be steam. It's still water. That's you. You are still you. But you can be in one form that is not healthy, not expressing health, not vital, not energized, stressed, overwhelmed, sick, etc., in discomfort, etc. Higher vibration of you might be someone who's energized, inspired, feels alive, is feeling so good in their body, can do all the things that they love to do without a second thought. So that is describing our organization of matter. And then what does it have to do with our experiences? Is that everything that comes in on a daily basis and over our lifetime is ultimately all read by your body in terms of energy and frequency. So what I mean by that is, you might remember seeing a wavelength chart similar to this little guy here in terms of the colors. And you may remember seeing like, okay, blue has a certain wavelength, red has a certain wavelength. What that is that's talking about the way those colors are vibrating so that our eyes can perceive them and tell the difference between the colors. Your brain and your nervous system is an extension of all these senses. So when you see, smell, taste, touch, experience, intuit something, that is your brain and nervous system bringing that information in and processing it. So based on whatever vibration that thing is vibrating at, that's how you pick it up and you process it and you receive it. Our brain and nervous system doesn't necessarily have to know if it's physical, mental, emotional. Our body will read it, whether it can process it or not. So we've talked about this idea that we have a bandwidth at which we can process all of our life's experiences. Things within that bandwidth we process really well. We generally think of these things as pleasant or positive. It might be as simple as reading a good book, watching a great movie, enjoying time with friends or family members, time in nature. Those are experiences that our body processes in the moment. Real time, our body adapts to it. Like we described, going for a run, we adapted to the core temperature going up and we brought our body back into homeostasis. When our body actually takes in that experience, it processes it and it integrates it. And what happens is it actually builds and adds that frequency to our cells and tissues. So we become a higher frequency, a more intelligent organization of matter. And what that does is over time, as we become and we grow and we organize our matter, that's regeneration, we build that healthier body and that more connected body. What happens when we have experiences outside of that bandwidth? So we all have these, whether they are sort of smaller, everyday stressors, traffic, to-do lists, something at home with family, friends, or if it's a larger, I like to think of transitions, traumatic events, loss. Those are all larger events. What happens though is the body reads these the exact same way. What the body reads is it says, I can't fully process that information in this moment. It's outside of my capacity to do so. What the body does very intelligently is it ultimately would like to process that information, ultimately would like to grow from it, move in this direction, and become a healthier expression of self. But since it doesn't have the full capacity in the moment, it's going to take that information and it's going to actually store it. It's going to store this information that we couldn't fully process in our cells and tissues as tension. So I draw these patterns here as layers. You can think of them as onion layers of tension building on in the system. And ultimately, we might feel like our bodies might feel tense. We might feel aches or pains or discomfort. We might feel stress. We might feel overwhelmed. That can be mental, emotional too, and it can affect how we see the world. We might feel sick, right? Ultimately, what's happening is the brain and the body there are no longer getting all the information 100% that we saw over here through that conversation. We're now starting to get less than that. And what that means when we get less than that information is we start to move this way. We might cross, there's this midpoint here. When we cross here, this is when we start to experience what we call symptoms. What we call symptoms. So I like to think of our symptoms. I want you to think of them today as our check engine light. So when we feel that ache or the pain, the discomfort, the mental emotional distress ever comes up through our body, we see or we feel, experience something, that is our body's a way of getting our attention and telling us that we are moving away from homeostasis. So think of it as a check engine. We are moving away from homeostasis. We need to do something to get us back on track. What do we do in our modern day world though? Often when we experience the symptom, we come right to it and we either apply a band-aid so that we don't feel it or see it or experience it, or we try to cope with it. If I'm feeling tired, I'm probably going to do extra coffee, not worried about what's the underlying root or cause, right? If I'm in a funky mood, maybe I'm going to go for the wine or the whatever and do and indulge extra because I'm trying to make up for how I'm feeling in my body. So that's a very ingrained thing in our culture to try to band-aid something rather than really get to the root cause. And I know you're here to do something different. I know you're here to really uncover that root cause and do everything you can to optimize your health and well-being. And that's why I want you to see this full spectrum. When we band-aid or quick fix this, we're not actually moving ourselves forward. What you'll notice is probably if you've done that in your life or you are doing that, different symptoms are going to pop up. Your body's going to find a different way to communicate with you because it's actually your friend and it's trying to help you out and tell you this. So in our modern day world, we have all these things we don't, what's essentially happening, let's say, when we hang out here for some time, is this is our body. Our body is going to try to help us by reducing this bandwidth. It's going to shrink the ability we have to process every day. And what that feels like is things that we used to do, maybe for fun or for pleasure, for joy, now might actually be adding to the stress and adding to the tension in our life. And I like to say that this is a normal stress response. This is our body when it's overloaded and it's taxed. The problem is when we stay here for a long time and we get stuck, or it's been many, many years here, our body's going to have a harder time bouncing back and may need some support. So this might be you, or this might be parts of you, or you might know what that feels like or have been there and don't want to go back there. So essentially what we want to do is, in our modern day world, we try to cover that up and try to, stimulate us and get ourselves out of that, but not really addressing the root, but more so covering up the symptoms. So if we could see that the root is actually, we have built on so much stress or so much tension from yesterday in our bodies, what if we could actually free up that stress, help the body reprocess anything that's built up from yesterday, and we could actually allow it to move back in this direction? That's a natural side effect of getting our body more and more connected, processing more of what's underneath the surface, our stress from yesterday or yesteryear, is going to actually get our body communicating better, which means we regenerate and build a healthier body over time. No, it does not have to take a full 7 years to start feeling healthier. You'll notice though, it's probably taken you a bit of time to get here. You know, some people it's months, years, decades that's taken to get you here. The beauty is that if we really start to process and integrate what's built up, that momentum that gets built, we can accelerate that process moving back. It doesn't have to take the same amount of time that it got there. It can be a fraction of the time. The other piece that's so important is our lifestyle and our actions and how we are living our everyday. Most of us are disconnected from the way that our body is designed to live. And that's a little bit about these pillars of health that I want to get into. I want to introduce you to them today. This is kind of an intro level class. And then there will be conversations to come to unpack them further for yourself and your journey, just based on your individual path and journey. And I'm always a resource for that. I find it so fun to dive into this. So essentially what we want to do, like we said, is help our body start to process and integrate. If you're on a journey with me and have been working with me, you know what it's like. We are going to allow our body, we're going to get ourselves into a relaxed state, and we're going to bring awareness to our body so our body can start to process these layers of tension. That's step one, right? I commend you for doing that and showing up. And it's such a valuable, important piece of the puzzle. And the other piece is your half, is how you show up, is what you're doing on the inside. And when you are here, I always say, keep it simple. There are a couple of things that are so important to optimize the nervous system healing and flow. And those I've probably already shared with you, but I'd love to share why. So hydration, sleep, and then coming in for your body work are so vital for that first pillar of health, which is an optimized nervous system. So our hydration is vital because our cells and tissues and our brain and nervous system are mostly water. Our cells are about 70%, our brain and nervous system are about 80 to 90% water. The information that travels and communicates is electrical. So that water is a conductor of electricity. It helps that information move more efficiently. So if you are well hydrated, your body can move that energy. Hydration recommendations are about half your body weight in ounces of water. I recommend, if you are able, to put some minerals, perhaps I can think of even just sea salt in your water, something that can help you absorb it a little better, just a little sprinkle. But in general, hydration and drinking that amount of water minimum, or at least working your way up to it, is going to help your body better communicate during this process. The second is sleep. When we sleep at night, our brain and body, if we think of our spine laying out flat, and we have our head and we have our tailbone, what's happening is we're decompressing from gravity. And when we fall to sleep, as we go into deeper and deeper states, we actually start to go through very gentle, they're called somatic waves. They move from head to toe. And what they do is they start to pick and pluck and process the day's events and start to release some of that tension while you sleep. So if you're not getting deep sleep, you might not be processing as much as your body is really capable of. If you're struggling with that, this process will help and will improve over time. But in the beginning, knowing that much as you can prioritize that sleep or even a restful state. So if you were to lay flat on your back and on your spine and you were struggling with sleep, that would be better than being awake and moving all around. That's not going to allow the body to even move through some of those gentle waves that we can access just by laying down. So thinking of sleep and hydration as foundational things. If you're in the beginning of this journey, that's your main focus, and coming in for your sessions to process and integrate and start to change the patterns that are building up in your system. What's going to happen over time is that eventually those patterns are going to change and your nervous system is going to free up more energy. You're going to start to feel better. You're going to start to have more energy for every single day. You're going to process every day a little better, and you're also going to have energy to better process the deeper layers of things that are stored underneath the surface. What happens is essentially this bandwidth starts to open. And when you're more adaptable, it's when I invite you to bring more awareness into what you're doing and how you can bring your life more into alignment with your body and what your body is asking of you. So I'm going to introduce all of these. Like I said, if you're in the beginning of your journey, just absorb, take it in, just feel curious about it. If you're further down in your journey, you might love starting to play with some of these things and stretching yourself, growing yourself. So ultimately, I want to get into the other 4 pillars, and we're going to go over them briefly. And like I said, we can go deeper individually with you. So number 2 is movement. And I like to think of movement as our body is designed to move. Our spine, when it moves, it sends information up to the brain and nervous system. So ultimately, stagnancy is stressful. If we're stagnant and not moving, that is stressful to the body. One way to think of this is our spine and essentially our body has certain ranges of motion that if we were very physically active, we'd probably go through all of them every day. But if we're the average typical person, we are most likely sitting a lot and not doing these interesting different movements. You might think of them as like yoga class movements, but I'll go through them briefly with you. So when our spine, if you were to stand on the side, when you do a motion of arching and curling, you can think of like cat and cow in yoga. That is one motion of the spine that's very important. I'm going to talk about all the motions that the spine should be moving in, and then there are ways you can bring this into your day, as simple as just doing these in the morning or doing these at the end of your day. So the cat and the cow, or the arching and curling of your spine, is one. I want you to think of moving from your center. You might think of this area at the base of your rib cage here. That area is going to move you. The center of you is going to lead that arch and that curl. And it can help to use breath and to like open your chest and shoulders. Think of that. And then arch and curl. Your neck is kind of just going to follow on that one. You don't need to do anything extravagant, but move it with the body. And then your second motion would be like a side bending of the spine. So you might think of creating that C now from side to side. You might think of putting your arms up and stretching this way and then this way, allowing that whole spine to curve. That's one of the big pieces about movement. And as you bring more movement into your life, is I want you to picture all of the spine moving. So all the way up to the top here. Like I said, the neck's going to kind of come along for the journey on these, but I want you to think of all the way through that shoulder blade area. A lot of people don't have a lot of movement there, or all the way down to the low back. Being mindful to use your core and your strength as you're doing these, that's going to keep you centered and in healthy movement. And then the last one is a rotation. And I always think of this one as visualizing like wringing out a cloth. That's what I'm doing with the two halves of my spine, as I'm wringing out a cloth as I rotate from one side to the other. Once again, I pretty much keep my neck sort of neutral over the shoulders when I do any rotation movements. Breath is also really helpful, again, to not force it, but just breathing as far as we can and then breathing as far as we can. None of these are meant to be forced. It's feeling where you're at and starting to notice where there can be more connection, and then choosing to move. Every time you choose to move, you shift your state, you shift your biochemistry. If you are feeling stuck, low energy, move your body. If you're feeling anxious, move your body. It's a big tool to get the brain and the nervous system online and to help it actually relax through movement. The other piece I want to share with movement is like our posture. Our posture is a really important connection in how the shape and how we hold our body. So when we stand, open, upright, shoulders back, head high, chest lifted, arms open, what that's doing is it's signaling to the body to create a certain biochemistry. It's signaling feel good hormones. It's signaling the reduce of cortisol or stress hormones. Versus if we're finding ourselves hunched a lot and coming over like this, which is very common in computer work or phone work, which a lot of us are doing these days, that can signal the exact opposite to the body. It can actually increase stress and decrease feel-good hormones. So think of your posture as another way to shift your state and an important thing to check in with throughout the day. So I loved understanding more of why we're doing it. Gives me deeper reason and deeper purpose. Oh, I can actually shift my state. Okay, let's do this. Number 3 pillar is our mindset. Essentially, our mindset means what we focus on expands. We have a particular part of our nervous system and our brain called our reticular activating system. It's a mouthful. And what it does is essentially says it's a set and detect system. So if you were to go shopping for something, like let's say you're car shopping and you really wanted this white Subaru Crosstrek, your nervous system is going to start to see it everywhere because you've been looking for it. You're looking for more information on it. Now you start to notice that this neighbor drives one and, oh, there's one at your school. Interesting. So your nervous system is a set and detect system. So most of us are on sort of a default survival state with our mindset. And our mindset and survival is very much so keeping you alive, keeping you out of danger, keeping you safe. Those thoughts are often not very happy, not very friendly, not very feel good. So essentially, when you're in survival, that's what your brain and body is going to focus on, and it's going to look for more of it. And it's going to be a lot of, fix this, do that, stay safe. That wouldn't be okay. Versus maybe what you want to feel in life, some more groundedness, some more centered, confident, happy. So essentially, how we can play with that is when we give our mind set something else to focus on that we want to see more of, that's how we can start to see it in our lives. One simple way to do this is to keep something like a gratitude journal where you're coming to the end of your day or the beginning of your day and you're writing down 3 things that you were grateful for and you are feeling it in your body. That's the important piece. You can't just write them, you've got to feel them in your body to really create change. What that's doing is the more you feel it and the more you're training your body to almost like look for those things throughout your day, so that when you get to your journal at night, you have evidence that that is true and you are able to do that. It is an exercise, as a practice. It is something that you may need to practice a long time, depending on where your mindset's at before you feel positive shifts. You may only need to practice a little bit to start to feel the positive shifts. It can just depend on what all is built up in there in mental stress. And I have a lot of other strategies I can share with you down the road for how to help with that. But that's our main focus in the beginning is, okay, just like we want to move in this direction here, there are certain emotional states that keep us in that lower density, less intelligent frequency. And then there are higher frequency thoughts and feelings. Our 4 highest vibrational thoughts and feelings, things that you might choose to focus on, are gratitude, as I just said, love, inspiration, and enthusiasm. So you might find yourself, you might even want to just journal on when is the time I felt that, if it doesn't feel super familiar now, or journal on something that you do feel really present and inspired on. Let yourself have time and space and that energy every single day so that your mindset can start to look for more of that. I'll add one more. I always like to say embracing your health and your wellness journey with curiosity helps with the mindset so much. If you are feeling hard on yourself or judgmental, or that this just woe is me, I get it. I've been there. It's a real deal to feel that way, and you have every right to say that's valid. But if you want to start to actually shift and make changes, you are going to want to approach this journey with curiosity, open-mindedness, a little bit more lightheartedness, even if it is just a 1 degree shift today. That's going to help your mindset. It's going to help your journey. Number 4 is nutrients and minerals or nourishment. It is essentially what the building blocks are for our body. We're talking about how our body builds through our energetic system, our bioenergetics of our nervous system, but then our food and our fuel are really the building blocks of that, or how we create new cells and tissues. So I like to think of nourishment and nutrients and minerals as one, understanding that our nervous system needs to be in a more open, relaxed state to get the most from our food and our fuel. So if we are feeling stressed, feeling busy, we're not going to digest as much of our food. We may actually be more reactive to certain foods or sensitive to certain foods. So it's so important to create an environment where that stress is reduced for you. So if you can put away phones or TV, just have connection time or even quiet time to eat and digest your meal. If you can take a few moments to breathe before you step into your meal time, or where you can start to listen to your body cues that will tell you, oh, I'm feeling full, or this would feel really nourishing right now, that would not. That's when I'm going to invite you in to start listening to your body around meal times, listening to your body around what would be nourishing. And I'm going to give you some guidelines too, some ways to better understand how our body processes. Everybody is so unique in terms of what's optimal. So I like to give things that are a little more general, and then I'm happy to help, once again, individualize things as you get further on your journey. But essentially, our body is going to find the easiest time processing, and it's going to be most likely to be in our bandwidth if it's closer and closer to the whole food source. So what I mean by that are, if you were to be able to go to the garden or go to the farm, like, what would you get? What are those things that are so close to the whole source, versus when you go to the middle aisles in the grocery store and things have been so packaged and so processed that it's hard to even tell what is a real food? Ask yourself that. How can you, if you're far from that, how can you add, one thing to your plate that's from the garden or fresh from the farm, whatever it is? How can you help your body? You'll help your body digest better. You'll help your body get more nutrients and minerals from things that are easy for it to make sense of, that aren't breeding. Some foods will breed chaos and stress in the body just by their nature. One example is our industrial oils. Those are very confusing to the body and can breed a lot of chaos to them, like our seed oils, like our canola oils, and like vegetable oil, etc. That can breed a lot of chaos to the body. So can super refined foods, like we're describing, things that are, white flour, like the Wonder Bread, etc. Those things are harder for our body to make sense of. Okay, so that's one thing. I invite you into nourishing your body. And I'm gonna add this one, which could fit in many of these pillars, but our breath is nourishment. Our breath is a way to connect with our bodies and to breathe and shift and bring life into our bodies. So when you breathe, you're stimulating a part of your nervous system that says, it's time to rest, it's time to digest. Let me reconnect to that piece. When you breathe deeply and when you slow your breath for a moment, when you extend your exhale longer than your inhale, that also signals that. So let's say you breathe in for a count of 4, you pause, you breathe out for a count of 6, you pause. Do that for a few rounds. It's slowing your breath. It's bringing your nervous system to a more relaxed state where you can be more nourished and you can digest more of life, not just your food, but all of life. Our last pillar, our 5th pillar, is stress and toxin reduction. This pillar can also cover a wide variety of things. What I want you to think of today are sort of 2 things. I want you to think of stress in your life. You might think of mental and emotional stress. And one of my favorite things is a brain dump activity. I'm going to give you the simple version of it. You grab out your journal or a blank piece of paper and you write down everything that's coming up in your mind. It might be a stress, a worry, things that are holding you back, beliefs that you have that are limiting, whatever it may be. It doesn't all have to be negative or bad. It can be anything that's on your mind, but that's taking up space, that's repeating over and over and over. Write it all down on paper. That will calm the mind for a moment. Come to each item. Ask yourself, is this true? Do I have control over this? Is that a yes or no? Can I shift something about this? If it feels really true, but your level head side of you knows it's not, maybe there's some emotion there that can be heard, felt, seen, can be expressed with someone to move that energy. Writing these down and then sort of going through a process of asking and reframing and coming to a place of a little more calm, of like, wow, I don't have so much control over that. Okay, I can take it off my list. It doesn't need to be something that's running on repeat for me anymore. I'm going to focus on this instead, like my gratitude. Okay, that's just one example. And then the other part of that pillar, the toxin reduction, I'll give you a few simple areas to start to look at in your life, whether you're aware of them or this is brand new to you. It's all good. It's always about, once again, learning, being curious on our journey and just moving forward one little step at a time. So I like to think of toxin reduction as looking at the things in our home that might be toxic, and how we can reduce kind of that load that we might carry, because we're not in control of everything, but there are some things that we can be more of control of. So our cleaning products are the products we use in our skin, our hair, beauty products, makeup, and our produce. We can think of ways to reduce the toxic load in those. I like to look at ewg.org. They are great for understanding like your cleaning products and your beauty products, how toxic they may be and how to find a better solution. So look at their website. You can search things. You can look at your items that you have, see if they're potentially holding toxins that can cause stress on your body. They're essentially causing additional stress that you were probably not very aware of, but your cells and tissues in your body are using a lot of energy to detox that on a daily basis. Hopefully they're doing a good job at detoxing it. Sometimes they're even struggling to get all the stuff we put in out. And that's where we can start to become sick or find certain organ systems not working so well. So that's one area to look. The other second suggestion I have for that is Think Dirty. It's an app. It's something you can use in the store and like scan your products, and it'll do the same thing. It'll rate how toxic the product is. It'll tell you what's in it, if there's something you should know or a better solution. They'll typically give you a healthier, less toxic solution. And then lastly is, we said, produce. So also by the ewg.org website, they have the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen lists. They do annually. This is on produce, and it's saying basically which produce has the most highest level of pesticides or toxic spray on them, and which have the least, so that if you do not buy 100% organic, which I try to do, but I understand that there are reasons that we may or may not, buy all of the Dirty Dozen organic. That's like saying that will help you significantly reduce your exposure to pesticides, and then buy the rest conventional if you do not buy 100% organic. What that's doing is it's reducing that toxic exposure that's coming in. And what it's doing, that just so you understand, the pesticides are kind of like an antibiotic. So it's messing with the gut microbiome, and the gut has so much to do with our mood and our mental emotional state. So if we are messing with our gut, we're going to have a harder time feeling good in our bodies and in our head. So I want you to think of that as, that's why that can be a priority. And it also just uses a lot of energy, as we said, to detox. So if you're feeling low energy, stuck, stagnant, not motivated, look at that pillar as something to work on, both mentally, emotionally, and the physical, the things we bring into our home. I feel like that is a wonderful starting point. I am here for you for questions. Please reach out, reply to me, send an email, pull me aside in the office. I am here to help you understand what you can do to personalize this to you. And I want you to really focus and think of what thing was most inspiring to me right now? What's got me most curious? How can I focus on that for the next 30 to 60 or even 90 days? That one thing, what can I focus on? That is going to help you build that inner resilience in your system and start to get the handle on one thing. It's okay to just focus on one thing, I promise you, and start to make even 1% shifts every day will accumulate and will absolutely transform who you are. I am a sum of 1% shifts over the last 7 to 10 years. My life and my health have changed dramatically. I was much sicker and much less healthy as a teenager than I am today. And I continue to live and breathe this work. And I'm an example of the 1% shifts really work, and they actually build a foundation that will allow you to shift and change rather than rubber band back to the beginning. And I know you all are on this journey to do things differently and to really transform your health and access new levels of well-being. So thank you for being on this journey. I celebrate you. I see you, and I am here for you. Have a beautiful day.